Nachshon is famous for several things, perhaps primarily, he is the first one who jumped into the Red Sea, the Sea of Reeds, Yam Suf, when the Egyptians were about to slaughter us and everybody's back was to the water with no way out. And God said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, tell the people if they want to, let them show their faith and go into the water. And there's a whole interesting Gemara about what happened next. And because of time considerations, we won't go into that. But what we do know is that Nachshon jumped into the water. And he jumped into the water, and the water did not split, and he was sinking. And it was going lower and lower, and the water was up to his neck. And he never lost faith, and the water split. And everybody went through, you know that story. Kriyat Yam Suf, the splitting of the Sea of Reeds. Nachshon had several things about him besides that. He was the leader. I've been talking about the tribe of Levi. I really should have been saying Yehuda, Judah. And he was from the tribe, he was the leader of the tribe of Yehuda. And I'm sorry for having started by referring to Levi. I meant Yehuda, Judah. And Judah is one of the most important tribes. Over the course of Jewish history, 10 tribes will be lost. The 10 tribes of Samaria up north will be taken by Assyria, Ashur, exiled and broken up among the entire expanse of the Assyrian Empire, and they lose contact with each other and they get lost. Only 3 tribes do not get lost. The ones that were in the south, the ones that were in Judea, and the separate country, and those 3 tribes were Judah, Yehuda, Benjamin, and Levi, the religious leaders who were based at the Beit HaMikdash in Jerusalem, let's say. So of the 3 tribes, of the 13 tribes, 12 tribes plus Joseph splits in half, Manasseh and Ephraim. Of the 13 tribes, the ones that will stand out historically will ultimately be Yehuda, Benjamin, and Levi. From Levi will come the Levies, the Levium, and a small subunit within Levi will become the Kohanim, the Kohanes. This stems back to the original Levi himself and his initial descendants, where of 3 children of Amram, on the line of Levi, one was Moses, he was a Levi, one is Miriam, she was a Levi, and one was Aaron, who started as a Levi, and God designated him to be the Kohen. So that line ultimately becomes the Kohen. But God designated only Aaron and his sons, and not further generations. God designated only Aharon as a Kohen, and his 4 sons, Nadav, Avihu, and those are the 2 who died prematurely, and Eleazar and Itamar. So Eleazar and Itamar live and continue the line. Nadav and Avihu died prematurely. And that was going to be the end of the Kohen line with Eleazar and Itamar. But later, when Pinchas arose in the face of a spiritual tragedy that was going on, with the women of Midian playing the sex weapon, God said to Pinchas, I designate you as a Kohen as well. You're from the next generation. So there was Aaron the Kohen, his 4 sons the Kohanim, and it ended there. But then God made a further decision that from the lines of Itamar and Eleazar, Eleazar's son Pinchas would also be a Kohen and the progenitor of Kohanim to this day. So Nachshon is an important person in Yehuda who ends up, on top of everything else, he's the progenitor first of these 3 boys. Solomon, not pronounced salmon like in English, Solomon, Elimelech, and Ploni Almoni. Ploni Almoni means anonymous. As we learned last week, because Ploni Almoni had right of first refusal to marry Ruth, when you get to chapter 4, and turned it down for very good reason, he therefore was spared the eternal embarrassment of being cited for all time to come as a yutz who had turned down the chance to be the progenitor of the Messiah, had turned down on Ruth, from whom David the Mashiach would come. But he had a good reason. He was married and he didn't want to start with all kinds of problems within his marriage had he taken on another wife at the same time, since polygamy was allowed, biblical polygamy was allowed. So we don't know his name. We're simply told his name is Ploni Almoni. There is a reason, we'll learn in our last class next time, that some people believe his name was Tov, like the Hebrew word for good. There's a pasuk in chapter 4, a verse in chapter 4, in which the word good appears and could be understood to mean good, the adjective, or to be a proper noun for the third son of Nachshon. The way the sentence works, Tov could be understood to have been a noun, the name, or the adjective. So we definitely know it as the adjective, as the name. Ploni Almoni is the guy, and his name might have been Tov, literally like mine is Dove. His might be Tov. We don't know for sure, in opinions. So anyway, Nachshon has 3 sons. Salmon has one famous son, Boaz, also known as Ivtzan. We'll worry about that another time. Salmon is the father of Boaz. These are all members of the Judah tribe. As we know from the very end of the book of Ruth, Boaz with Ruth are the progenitors of Yishai, who leads to David, Shlomo, eventually the Mashiach. So we always talk about how Mashiach comes from Ruth, but it takes 2 to tango. And Boaz also is the progenitor of the Mashiach. And Mashiach is from the tribe of Judah. And that means that, again, is all the line of Judah. Tribe follows the father. So that's Salmon. Elimelech, we already know, had 2 sons, Machlon, who married Ruth, and Kilion, who married Orpah. And we know that Orpah will drop out of the equation when they move back to Eretz Israel, Palestine, same thing as Israel. And Ruth will tell the 2 daughters-in-law, go back to your God and go back to your Moabite people. Orpah, despite crying, will do so. Ruth stays with her. We know all of that. Ruth will stay. Machlon will die. Machlon will die. We know that. All right, let's put that. And Kilion will die. The 2 of them will die. We know that. So you'll have Ruth, and Orpah will check out of the equation. So you have Ruth. She's the main player that stays in the equation. Let's put it onto a really bold face. Okay, there we go. All right. So Salmon, dating back to Nachshon, Boaz, through Elimelech, out of all that, you have Ruth. And through Ploni Almoni, who could have married Ruth, you end up with his daughter, Naomi. Who? Naomi is the mother-in-law of Ruth. Naomi is the mother of Machlon and Kilion. Okay? So if you're thinking, but isn't she the mother-in-law? Yeah, she is. And Ruth is going to end up marrying Boaz, which I'm not giving away spoilers here. Many of you already know how this story is going to end. So it does mean that Ruth ultimately marries her cousin. Right? They're the sons of brothers. She's literally not, because as we know from Tuesday night class, the child of a non-Jewish mother and a Jewish father is a non-Jew. Ruth is a pure Moabitess at first, so she's born non-Jewish. So she's like that Ma'acha, that beautiful lady from wartime that David took. She doesn't have any Jewish lineage per se, which allows her, like any convert, to marry a Jew, just not a Kohen. Another story. All right. So what are we left with? We're left with that Ploni Almoni has the right of first refusal to marry Ruth in chapter 4. And we learned with biblical text that an uncle may marry, under the Bible, under halacha from the Torah, an uncle may marry his niece. However, an aunt may not marry her nephew. We learned that last week. And there's a lot of other marriage pairings that are forbidden. But the one that is an exception to most of the others is that a niece may marry an uncle. Now, Ploni Almoni, I guess, is an uncle of Ruth, because by the time he comes in chapter 4, she already has converted to Judaism. On the other hand, as we know from Tuesday night classes about Tamar and her relationship with Amnon, before all of that happens, if the person was born a guy, the person's a guy. Yes, the person lives a Jew, but retains Goy lineage. So a Goy who converts to Judaism becomes a 1,000,000% Jew. But in terms of lineage, such as getting land in biblical Israel through your tribal affiliation, let's say a boy who's the son of a Kohen man and a non-Jewish woman, that's a forbidden relationship unto itself for more than one reason. But if the boy converts, he doesn't ever become a Kohen. He doesn't gain lineage. You gain religion through conversion, you don't gain lineage. Okay. So let's just bring this person in. Okay. So what we have here is Ruth is not literally, but just for our education. If she were Jewish through lineage, she would be allowed to marry an uncle and vice versa. But the uncle who has right of first, you see why he has first refusal? Nachshon is dead. Well, she's not going to marry Solomon, he presumably is dead. Elimelech, we know, is dead. So the only one from that generation who's alive is Ploni Almoni, maybe named Tov also. She gets first refusal. He turns it down. Now goes to this generation. Machlon is dead, Kilion is dead. Naomi's a woman. Who's going to marry Ruth? Boaz is next in line. And Boaz marries her. The name Ivtsan, by the way, according to the Talmud, he was known by two names. And Ivtsan actually was the name of one of the judges in the Book of Shoftim. This all takes place during the time of the judges. And Boaz was known as the husband of Ruth, Boaz, but he also was known as Ivtsan. Sometimes it happens that a person is known by more than one name. That's not as unusual as it might sound. So that's your chart. Okay. One more moment for you to absorb it. That's your chart. Elimelech is dead. Let's take him out of the picture also. Okay. That looks right. And by now, Nachshon has passed away through natural causes. So that's what you got. Okay. Let's go back to the text. Let us go back. Oh, first I have to come down here. Okay, there's a strategy to this. First you go down, and then you go back up. All right. There we go. We take it off the screen, and we proceed to the joy of Torah. Okay. So Naomi had a kinsman on her husband's side. It's Naomi, and that's Boaz. We just crossed out all the other names. A man of substance, family of Elimelech. Substance meaning he's rich and he's politically powerful. He's both Elon Musk and Trump. They've been talking about the conflict of the most powerful man and the most wealthy man. Elimelech at that moment, Boaz at that moment is both. Elimelech had been both. So he's most powerful and most wealthy. Family of Elimelech, because we just saw that he's of the family of Elimelech, and He's like a nephew. Okay. And he's a cousin of Machlon and Kilian. So she had a kinsman. Okay. Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, I'd like to go to the fields and glean among the ears of grain behind someone who may show me kindness. We've learned that al pi halacha, the Torah mandates, we're used to the American styles of socialism or state socialism. So we know from socialism and the state way of doing it is the government collects from people who have money and gives to people who don't have money. Let's just write that. And gives to people who don't have money. Welfare, unemployment. Now, some of these things are things that the recipients themselves are paid in for. All those years you were paying in for your Social Security and for your unemployment as an insurance. So it's really not charity, and it's a different kind. It's a true entitlement. You are entitled to Social Security. You paid into it. But then there's welfare, which is more of a social safety net that a society takes upon itself to provide for people who really should be entitled, because they're members of the society and God gave them a bad break. Or maybe it's a good break for them, but we call it a bad break. So they need help. The politics gets in, we're not going to spend, is on the people that are perfectly healthy, able-bodied, and collect instead of going to work. Okay. In Torah law, what you have is that anybody able-bodied works. And if they don't work for a living, but they want an entitlement, the Torah says you will not get a check deposited in your account on the first of the month. Instead, go to a farm and schwitz all day in the sun and gather whatever gleanings happen to have been dropped by the farm workers when they were harvesting and carrying stuff into the warehouse. So that's what you do. And there's also shikha from the word shokeach, to forget. If the farmhand forgot stuff on the way in, that's available to the poor. Stuff that got dropped, leket, is available to the poor. Peah, a corner of the field, is available to the poor. And all three. So in the same field, particularly during harvest time, there will be the gleanings that got dropped. There will be, because there's all this stuff, there'll be other stuff that wasn't dropped that the farmer forgot, that the harvesters forgot to even go for. And there's going to be the corner of the field that they're not allowed to touch, even to drop or forget. And the poor, they don't get a check in the mail, but they're entitled to go to the fields.
A couple of weeks ago.
They don't even ask for permission. Let's just mute all.
I don't know. I didn't look at.
Okay, solve that. They won't have to ask for permission as long as they're Jews. They just go and take. Now, does someone actually check their identity cards to show they're Jews and that they're not? Because Jews have non-Jews in biblical times have no entitlement to that. A non-Jew living in Israel has no entitlement in biblical times to pull stuff from the corner of the field or the gleanings or the forgotten. That's a Torah law for the Jews. So did they have Tom Holman or someone like that in Eretz Israel 3,000 years ago checking on whether they're allowed to be there? No, because everything was different then. Countries were one people, basically. You had very few people in a country who are not of that nation, that ethnicity. You didn't have the kind of polyglot mixes that exist today. Like the United States, a great melting pot, or it was a great melting pot. Now it's whatever it is, cultural pluralism and DEI. But in biblical times, Israel was Jews, and Moab was Moabites, and Ammon was Ammonites, and Assyria was Assyrians, and each had one God only. You didn't have religious pluralism. And the idea of Elimelech and his one little family being Jewish and sticking with their God, very unusual. And the only way he got away with it probably is because he was so famous that they treated him as an honored guest. But they would not have allowed a large number of Jews in Moab worshiping the God of Israel, having a synagogue. Rather, it would be like Saudi Arabia and most Arab countries where Jews are not allowed to worship publicly, nor Christians for that matter. So with this background further, we now clearly understand the unique relationship of Boaz to Naomi and thus to Ruth. He is the most powerful guy in the country, but he's also Naomi's relative, her brother-in-law, also her cousin. It's all stuff going on. And what could be better, although Ruth would be entitled, is she entitled? She's non-Jew. She's not entitled to pick up gleanings anywhere in Israel. On the other hand, she's doing it on behalf of a Jew, Naomi, who's too old and tired to do it easily. So she's not legally entitled, but you could let her, especially if she can show that she's doing it for a Jew. It's complicated. When you read it in Shul on Shavuot, it goes really quickly. You read everything we're talking an hour, it goes through in 30 seconds. It's very complicated what's going on. Everybody's saying, oh, that's nice. She went, she gathered gleanings, gave it to Naomi, and she got married to Boaz, and they lived happily ever after, and the Messiah came. Not so simple. She easily could have been denied access to any farm at all, because you're a guy. Then she's got to prove she's a Jew. Now, the good news is if she converted, she doesn't have to prove it was a kosher conversion, because there was no such thing then as a non-kosher conversion. There was no Reform Judaism, no conservative Judaism, none of this heterodoxic nonsense, no open Orthodox. There was Judaism. Consequently, if she were converted, she didn't need a gold certificate from the RCC, from the Rabbinical Council of America, whatever, and everybody would know because it would stand out, especially like everybody knows about Ivanka Trump. We don't know about the identity of every single American who happened to convert to Judaism, but everybody knows about Ivanka Trump being a Jew. How come? Because she's the daughter of a very famous man, President of the United States, rich guy. So it's very famous. On the one hand, Trump is a Nazi and a Hitler. And on the other hand, his daughter's an Orthodox Jew, and he's a Zaidi to all these Orthodox grandchildren who keep Shabbos and kosher. In fact, while all the Jewish leaders of American Jewish organizations are busy calling him a Hitler and a Nazi, he could turn back to them and say, Jewish leaders in America, I'm the only one in the room who has Shomer Shabbos grandchildren, who even has Jewish grandchildren. Think about that. So everybody knows that Ivanka is a Jew. In the same way, everybody knew that Naomi's daughter-in-law, Ruth, is a Jew. It just stood out because Naomi's famous, Elimelech is famous. He's the one who abandoned the country. The kids all died. Everybody's talking about how he got, you see, he left Israel, he abandoned the people, so God killed them all. And then there's this Ruth who came back and she converted. So everybody knows that she doesn't have to prove she's a Jew. Okay. So they let her on. And Boaz, though, doesn't know her. So she's famous by name, and people have heard of her, but they haven't seen her. We've all seen Ivanka. But we haven't seen, they didn't have social media, they didn't have TV and telephone and who knows what, and nobody saw. So he sees her working in his field. Some guy, or Jew, well, she must be a guy, her hair is not covered. Or maybe she's not married, so she doesn't have to hair. Who knows? Maybe she looks like a guy. Did Moabites look different from Jews? The way that, let's say, Hispanics, but you have Hispanic Jews. It's all very complicated. Misubach. So what ends up happening is he wants to know who she is. And they tell her, oh, that's Ruth. You know, Ruth, the convert with Naomi. Oh, okay, I got it. Take good care of her, because she's mishpacha. Naomi is mishpacha, and she took care of mishpacha. So let's watch out for her. And it's a miracle of God. One miracle of God is that of all the Jewish farms, nowadays, you don't find Jewish farms. Now you find Jewish doctors, Jewish lawyers, Jewish accountants, Jewish IT. You don't find Jewish farmers. Eretz Israel, you find them in the moshavim and the kibbutzim. But here, in 1920s, they had some in Vineland, New Jersey. That's another story. But as far as Jewish farmers, but then everybody was a farmer. So the odds of her landing at Boaz's farm were impossible. They were less than minuscule. So miracle one from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that she ends up at Boaz's farm. And miracle number two is that Boaz has heard about her and therefore knows who she is. And this is very important. Let's get back to text. Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, I'd like to go to the fields, glean among the ears of grain. By the way, there were no Jewish pirates in those days. If there had been Jewish pirates, how much would they have been charging for ears of grain? My thought is it would be a buccaneer. So anyway, she wants to go and glean among the ears of grain behind someone who may show me kindness. It is a big thing. I don't want to end up, this can be tricky. I'm going to the farm. I'm a really pretty lady. She doesn't say so, but we understand from the commentaries and the storyline that she's gorgeous. And she stands behind some farmhand who has not, let's say, got 20 years of post-high school education and 15 years of post-grad education, but it's just a farmhand. In the middle of the day, his wife isn't there, or maybe he has no wife. Maybe he has 8 wives. He's got this gorgeous woman in the middle of a big farm. There's a big farm. These are big farms. So you can rape somebody. No one's going to be nearby to see what's going on. She's very lucky. One thing the Torah is assuming typically a man will go gathering the gleanings, not a pretty lady, because she's going to be, the women are separated from men, right? For morality. So at a farm, the women are in the kitchen and they're preparing the food for the men. And they're sewing and they're making butter, whatever they taught you in 4th grade about the early American colonialists and churning butter. They're not out there chopping wood or working in the field collecting sheaves. So Naomi says, go. L'chi, go for it. I mean, what you going to say? We have no food. Off she went, like Red Riding Hood. She came and gleaned in a field behind the reapers. And fortunately, as luck would have it, Vayiker b'mikra, as it happened, they don't use the word luck. Luck would be masal. I normally don't like their translation, but it's better than having, I don't know, a equatorial translation. I don't know, some Arab translation. We wouldn't understand how to read it. So Vayiker mikra, as it happened, not really luck, because it isn't luck. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it happen. She just so happened to go to Boaz's field. And we've explained all about that. Boaz, all right, now is your next miracle. Boaz is never at the farm. When you own a big farm, I mean an industrial farm. I'm not talking about your backyard where you're growing tomatoes and peppers and some lemons. I'm talking about a farm in Nebraska that extends from one part of the state to the other part of the state. Boaz, according to the commentaries, never ever went to that farm except for that day. Something hit him. Maybe it was the season of the gleaning and the reaping he decided to stop by. He came from Bethlehem. He saw the reapers. Obviously, they were all in a good mood. They weren't grim. And these are very important. If you ever hang around a Sephardim, you call a Sephardi to a Torah aliyah. When you call up an Ashkenazi on Shabbat, let's say, for the aliyahs in the Torah, Baruch Hashem v'rach, Baruch Hashem v'rach l'olam v'ed, Baruch Hashem v'rach l'olam, Baruch ta Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher. Okay, so that's Ashkenazi. If you're in a Sephardi shul, you call them up. First thing they say, Hashem imachem. Hashem imachem, God be with you. And then everybody in the congregation answers, Yevrecha Hashem. And sometimes they say God's name with us. Adonai imachem. And I'm only saying the name, I'm allowed to because I'm teaching Torah and I'm teaching. Otherwise, I'm not allowed to say that word, even though that's not God's name. That's itself a pronoun. Hashem is a pronoun of a pronoun. Hashem is a pronoun of Ado, which is a pronoun of the name of God we're not allowed to say, except the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur and the Kodesh HaKodeshim, the Holy of Holies. So Boaz comes, Adonai Machem, and they respond, Yevarech Adonai. May God be with you. That's how he says it, instead of hello. And everyone answers, may God bless you too. And the commentators talk about it. How can you say that word, Adonai, which I'm allowed to say while I'm teaching Torah, but how could you say the name? And again, it's only a pronoun, but it's a first level pronoun, not a second level. How are you allowed to say that just instead of hello? There's no need. And you explain that it's an exception. So when you're in a shul and the Sephardi's going, Adonai Machem, and everyone's going, Yivrech Adonai, or Hashem Machem, they're doing what they do. And this is where it's from. Chapter 2, verse 4 of the Book of Ruth, from Boaz. And does that mean, therefore, that Boaz was a Sephardi? No, there was no division yet between Sephardim and Ashkenazim. And the tribe of Yehuda was universal, the uniform. Okay. So he came from Bethlehem. And notice Bethlehem is in Judea. You know that from Tuesday night King David class. Bethlehem is in Yehuda. And you know it from daily politics. When they talk about the West Bank, we always emphasize on Tuesday nights that its real name is Judea Samaria. Samaria is the north and Judah in the south. And when the Arabs call it the city of Bethlehem, that's Bethlehem, the southern so-called West Bank, Judea. Boaz is a member of the tribe. It all fits together. Half of what I expend time in class doesn't have to be spent when you really know all the stuff. It just all fits. It's like a jigsaw puzzle you don't have to put together. They just put the pieces on the table in front of you, and then the hand of God or someone or your teacher starts putting the pieces in, and you start watching Son of a Gun. They all fit. Boaz said to the servant in charge of the reapers, who is that? Lemia Narazo. Whose girl is that? Now, why? So the commentators ask, Boaz is looking at women? You're not supposed to look at women. Let's say there are women who are pretty. You have a wife, you look at your wife. Let's say you have a lady you're seeing, she's not your wife yet, but very possibly will be, you're looking at her. But a man is not supposed to, not only pornography, a man is not supposed to sit admiring, a Torah person, not supposed to sit admiring photographs of beautiful women, or not beautiful women that he's looking at. You're not supposed to. So the rabbis ask, when he says Lemia Narazo, it's a little surprising. The Boaz is asking, who is this woman? Who does she belong to? Lemi, to whom is this Zot Nara? And that can mean is she married? On the one hand, is she married? Is he interested in marrying her? What's that about? Well, we learned in chapter 4, he's not married. He's not married right now. He's an elderly man, very elderly, very wealthy, and he's not married. Is that what's motivating him? Lemi, to whom? And the rabbis tell us he was motivated by her midot, her personality, modest character. She was dressed modestly, despite the hot sun of Bethlehem and of the nearby area in the summer. Well, how do you know it was summer, Rabbi? Well, it's the time of the gathering of the barley. And we just learned 2-3 weeks ago that the barley is gathered on Shavuot season. And we know from life that Shavuot's in June. And we know that the Middle East is like Los Angeles temperature. So Los Angeles in June is very hot. And how do we know that? Because we watch the TV and we watch the riots. So it all fits together. Every piece fits together. So even though she's in the gathering and bending down and bending down and bending down and picking up sheaves and schlepping in the middle of June in the heart of Palestine, which is the same exact thing Israel, it's the same thing you call it, whatever, it's Israel. So there she is, and she's wearing full clothing. She's not exposing her arms below her knees, maybe, or certainly her thighs. And I don't know what she's doing vis-a-vis her hair, but she's modest, like a yeshiva girl, like a Beis Yaakov girl, or just a nice modern Orthodox girl. Don't have to be Beis Yaakov. Modern Orthodox dress very respectfully. And so, and I've got to be a voice for the modern Orthodox, full disclosure. So who is this girl of good midos, of good characteristic? Servant in charge, the Rebbe said, she's the Moabite. She's the guy who came back with Naomi, because that Moabite, it's not like today. Today, if I tell you who she's the one that just came from France. She's the one that just came from Australia. She's the one that just came from Argentina. When you say she's the one from Moabite, you basically say she's the guy. She's a shiksa. Because there's no Moabites hanging around with Naomi. What's a Moabite doing in Eretz Israel in biblical times? Among the likes of Boaz. She's a guy. She's the guy who came back with Naomi from Goy land, Moab. And she said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves, mind the reapers. I mean, Ribbon Shalom, Boaz, she's been on her feet all day. She hasn't sat down all day. Now, I'm sure in those days they didn't wear high heels. That's a style, mishigas, of the modern era in Europe to compensate women for being 3 inches shorter than men on average. So it raises their height and ends up not deliberately at first, also impacting how women look when they're wearing them. It was really just to raise the women up. Anyway, she's wearing flats, sandals presumably, but since the morning, Ribbon Shalom, she has rested but little in the hut. Ma'at, she's shifta habayit l'shevet, to sit in the house, very little. Terrible. She's really got gumption. Okay? Boaz said to Ruth, I'm going to go on 14 more minutes tonight with your permission, I hope. If you need to leave, please don't hesitate, but I'll go on 14 more minutes because I do want to finish the book on Thursday, as promised. And I've incorporated a lot of the commentaries in my introduction, actually to make better use of the time. Boaz said to Ruth, listen, my daughter. What is this, my daughter business? BT, my bat, my daughter. You know, bat means daughter. Let's say, you say, God forbid, for a Misha Berach, someone should be well, so-and-so, a girl, bas so-and-so. Bat is a daughter. BT, my daughter, bat shali. Why does he call her my daughter? Well, we saw the chart. It's kind of like, everybody's related to everybody here. Okay, just a quick refresher. Yeah. So there is she. She's kind of like his cousin, not exactly his daughter, and she's not even his cousin because her lineage is not Jewish. But on the other hand, like most wives, she's younger than Machlon. And Boaz is older than Machlon. He's the oldest of them. We know Naomi's elderly. She can't glean. We know Boaz is very elderly. There's a midrash that he died of old age right after his first night of marriage with Ruth, chapter 4. Sorry if I'm ruining the story for the one person who doesn't know the ending. I'm trying to save time here. Boaz ultimately will marry Ruth, have one marital encounter, and from that will come the line that leads to King David and Mashiach. And he will die that next day of old age. God kept him alive to procreate Mashiach. Some story, huh? So Boaz is elderly. Naomi is elderly. Machlon and Kilion, they would have been much younger. And Ruth and Orpah, well, Orpah's out of the story. Ruth is younger. So Boaz, when he refers to her as my daughter, it's sort of like, I hope you got that. I hope you got that chart. Sometimes it shows and sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, let's get back to the text here. In case you didn't get it, Let me just try it one more time. I'm going to do share. Just make sure you got the chart. It's a little complicated the way I have to go from one platform to the other platform to get you the document on Word. But anyway, now for sure you had it. So again, we said Boaz is extremely elderly. Naomi is quite elderly. And by contrast, Ruth is quite younger. So Boaz refers to Ruth as my daughter. So there's something legitimate there. It's like if you have an uncle 30 years older than you, and he refers to you as a kid, and what's that all about? Well, because the age is that different. So let's get back to the text. And okay, that platform. Okay, here we go. Back to Chrome. Okay, come on, Chrome. Okay, good. So here we go. He says to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter, don't go to glean in any other field. Stay here." It's all God's miracles, that he came back from Bethlehem, that he spots her there, that she happened to land there, and that he's proactively, don't go anywhere else. Lo ta'avuri mizeh, stay here close to my girls. Im narotai. He knows his employees. Don't hang around with my boys. But then he comes to realize she's got to gather. She's going to send some girls there. Okay, keep your eyes on the field they're reaping and follow the girls, because I have some girls reaping also. I've ordered the men not to molest you. Tziviti Tanya Arim. Actually, another wrong translation. Anashim would be men. This is not Arim, the young lads. You're talking about people who are teens and early 20s, and those are the people that need to be told not to molest her. I've instructed my young men, they haven't seen a woman for who knows how long during this harvest. And it's a big farm, and I told them to keep your hands off. Levilti nageh. You know the word nagia? Somebody says, I'm shomer nagia. I observe the laws of nagia. So that's that word nagaich. I've told them, no nagia. Don't you touch her. Not molest you, not touch her. Don't touch her. Don't rub against her sleeve. And when you are thirsty, go to the jars and drink some of the water that the men have drawn. We have a section near the kitchen or whatever, or maybe in the middle of the field, because they didn't have plumbing in those days. And, so they would have a big barrel or many barrels of water brought from wells. And his employees had access to the wells. And the Torah says other people are allowed to come and glean. Doesn't say they're allowed to have your water. He says you can have water. Don't worry about it. Take any water you need. She prostrates, face on the ground, full spread on the ground, face down on the ground, like you see Muslims in their mosque prayer. She really just like you see the men and some of the women do in shul on Yom Kippur, when they have those three places where the kol ha'am hayu korim u'mishtachavim. So she prostrated and said, "Why are you so kind to single me out? I'm a foreigner." I have this experience sometimes where, let's say there's a non-Jewish woman and comes to me for pastoral care or for other rabbinic guidance. And it's always tricky. It's always tricky for a man to be with a woman alone. And if she doesn't know how Orthodox Judaism works, it could seem uncomfortable, like the man is being so friendly. He's being friendly because he's a rabbi. If he's touching her, okay, that's another thing. He's not touching her because he's an Orthodox rabbi, and he's not touching her, but he's being very friendly. And so she's like that with Boaz. He's not touching her. He's giving orders, don't touch her. But you're awfully nice to me, and I'm a goy. Nachriya, good word to know. Nachriya. A goy, the word goy means nation. Actually, Jews are referred to in the Tanakh in several places in the Bible as a goy. Likewise, Shabbat afternoon, Shmona Esrei. Ata echad v'shimcha echad. Umiki Amcha Yisrael Goy Echad Ba'aretz, that the Jews are called Goy Echad. We are one unique nation. So Goy means nation. Why do we call Goyim Goy? They are the nations. There's the Jews. We are a nation. And there's nation versus the nations. How can you put all nations in one lump and just the Jews alone in another lump? You're going to put 100 nations in one lump? They're all the Goyim? Well, pick up any day's paper and take a look at what the latest news is out of the United Nations or the International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court. Yeah, the Goyim, 100 nations, together with Macron and with Canada and with England. They just put a ban on 2 Israeli government cabinet ministers. We'll talk about that more on Sunday, Mitzvah. The nations. There's we, and there's the Goyim. And America is Yotzei Min HaKlal for now. There's the miracle of America that's hard to even process. We take it for granted. We don't realize. If you think it's never been worse in America because an Arab threw a Molotov cocktail in Denver and an Arab lover went and shot 2 non-Jews in Washington, D.C. outside a Jewish exhibit or museum, and it's never been worse. And there's more anti-Semitic incidents on the ADL chart than ever before. Let me tell you, you have no idea how good we have it. The fact that this class is taking place on Zoom and is going to end up on YouTube, and that the government is not here locking us all up. You kidding me? Or just having us killed altogether, like they did to Rabbi Akiva for teaching Torah, and so many others, like the Soviets did to rabbis for teaching Torah. And we couldn't have better. So America is unique, but otherwise the Goyim. So one term we have for non-Jews is the Goyim, the nations. And another is Nochri. Nochri is a stranger. That's what it means. And sometimes, like if you're in mixed company and you're talking to another Jew and making a reference to a guy, so sometimes if you know you're talking to someone knowledgeable, you won't use the word guy, you'll use the word Nochri, because of the great misconception that the word guy is an insult, like the N-word, or an epithet like kike. You're allowed to, a Jew's allowed to say that, or the other words that are used for Italians and Irish, etc. So there are some who have the misconception that the word goy is of that nature. Actually, it's not. It's just a shorthand for non-Jew. Non-Jew is 2 syllables, and Americans prefer 1 syllable to 2 syllables, and 2 syllables to 4 syllables. If Judea Samaria were 2 syllables and West Bank were 4 syllables, even the Goyim would refer to it as the West Judea Samaria. Americans like fewer syllables, so we use goy instead of Nochri. But it's good to be among people. If you're with people who know the term, it's a little safer when you're on a subway train and you're referring to a Nochri. Okay. Boaz said in reply, I've been told of all that you did for your mother-in-law, Ruth. Like I've been told the words, it's like saying about Ivanka Trump, I've been told that you're the daughter of the richest guy in the world, one of the richest guy in the world, and the most powerful guy in the world, and you took on Orthodox Judaism? I can't, and you could afford anything. You could go anywhere on Saturday, and you could afford anything in the world, and you took this. I can't. So I've been told all that you did for your mother-in-law, such chesed for Naomi after the death of your husband, how you left your father, your Moabite father, who, by the way, is the king. It's Eglon, the king of Moab. So it's like Ivanka, she didn't leave Trump. She's still with the Trump organization. They have a good relationship, apparently. But you left your father, Eglon, who ends up getting killed by one of the shoftim, one of the judges, Ehud, and you left your mother and the land of your birth, Moab, and you came to a people you've never known before. Yeah, we're just across the street on the other side of the Jordan, but you don't know these people. I mean, how well do we, in this class today, really know anybody in Jordan or in Gaza? And hopefully your answer is, I don't really know anybody in Gaza. That means you're happier. So may the Lord, just as he was saying to his fellows when he came, what did he say? He said, if I don't finish, okay, he said, Yevarecha Hashem, all right, Hashem imachem, Yevarecha Hashem, God's with you, may God bless you. So he says, I've heard about you, and may God bless you. And I've been told what you did. And therefore, may the Lord reward you. Yishalem Hashem po'aleich. And he's not saying Hashem, he's saying Adonai. Yishalem Adonai po'aleich. May you have a full recompense from God, Elohei Yisrael. And you came under his wings. What does that mean? Lachasot tachat kanafav. You've come to find shelter under the wings of this eagle. By converting to Judaism, you gave up the shelter and safety of living in one of the world's strongest countries, Moab, and being the daughter living in the safety of the palace, to instead, what's your safety? Elimelech is not protecting you, he's dead. Naomi can't protect you. Husbands can't protect you. You're under the wings of God. I mean, that's the only protection you have. Again, like, right, you got the Jews in America now, they're asking for more money out of the federal government to hire more security guards in their temples and in their shuls. Okay, and they feel that's going to give protection. Believing Jew understands your protection comes from God. And if you're protected by God, you're safe. And for whatever reason, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not planning to protect at that moment, but God forbid is hiding his countenance at that moment, then you could have all the security guards in the world. Isn't going to do anything. You follow derech hateva, you do the natural thing, and you do what you can. Okay. So as we wrap it up, it is time to wrap up. She answered, "You are most kind, my lord, to comfort me and to speak gently to your maidservant, instead of being a gruff bulvan, who's so kind. I'm not so much as one of your maidservants. What am I? I'm a nothing." And at mealtime, he said, "Come over and eat with us. Nebuch, I only invited you to have water. Come and eat food." And he gave her some grain and da-da-da-da-da. And then she got back up to glean. And he said, not only are you to allow her easily to glean, but don't get in her way. Again, don't bump into her and don't bother her. In fact, since she's gathering grain that fell out of your arms, and since I hired you because you're professionals and you do not typically drop stuff, I want you to pull out some stalks from the heaps and leave them on the ground so it should look like green gleanings. And don't bother her, not scold her. Lotik aruba, don't mock her. So why doesn't he just tell his fellas, give her the grain, give her the leaves, the sheaves? Why pull them out and drop them on the floor? For her honor and dignity, that she should not feel that she's being given charity. That's how I started class. We don't have American-style welfare entitlements and food stamps. We don't give charity. People who are able-bodied work for their keep. And not only is that out of kindness to the taxpayers, but it's a kindness to the people in need, that they don't have the shame and they don't ultimately regularize, they don't accustom themselves so much to asking for charity that they lack shame over time. We facilitate their needing to work for it so they can carry it home with dignity. Don't look at me like a pauper at charity. I worked in the scalding hot sun all day to do this and to fulfill this mitzvah of gleaning, of gathering the gleanings. So he says, you should go ahead, azavtem velikta velo tigaraba, You should pull it out for her. She should have what to pull. But on the other hand, drop it. She gleaned until evening, etc. I think that'll take it to it. I'll break here at 18. There's like five more pasukim. I don't want to go beyond the current hour. And next class, we will finish on Thursday, Mirz Hashem, the rest of the book. Thank you so much for being here. My goodness, thank you for sticking with us the whole time. Everybody, it's really amazing. So thank you so much for sticking with us all day. And have a wonderful week. And